That's like the funniest thing. 10 books. Although people do say it's predictable every single book. Hey guys, welcome to my reading recap for the first quarter of 2026. When I tell you guys this is the most I've read within the time period in my adult life, I'm not lying. I do have the mic today because I am filming near my bookcase, which I feel like we haven't been here in a while. And my lights keep turning off if I plug it into the wall, so I'm plugging that into my PC, which is very loud. So let me show you guys for my reading challenge. I have a goal for 10 books, which is pretty average for me. I usually don't read or set a big goal because I don't want to stress myself out, but I've already read 7 of 10 books. So without further ado, let me tell you guys about the 7 books that I read from January to March. So the first book I finished this year was They Bloom at Night by Chang Tan-chun. In this story, we follow our main character, Noon or Nyum, and her mother. And the place that she lives is called Mercy, which was overtaken by a hurricane. And since all these floodwaters started appearing because of the hurricane, a lot of red algae has been blooming in the water, and there have been strange occurrences occurring within the town. Nyum has a lot of trauma that she has to deal with, and with her mother, who doesn't seem to really understand where she's coming from, and with the trauma of losing her brother and her father a few years prior, there's a lot that she has to deal with and go through. And a bit down the line, the harbor master actually gets in contact with her and her mother and puts them on this mission to deal with this monster and find out more about this monster that lurks in the water and is trying to disturb the peace and the people who are still residing in Mercy. And New will be traveling with none other than the harbor master's daughter, Covey. They get on a bit of an adventure. Essentially, this book is pretty creepy. It is in the horror genre. It deals with a bit of body horror, so you're getting a lot of gore descriptions. Things are very vivid. The way that the town of Mercy is described and how things are there and how the people are making do with what they have while they're living there, the situation is very dire. So you're really feeling how desperate these characters are, and you're learning reasons as to why these characters still remain in this town when they can just pick up everything and move to a place that is more stable and healthier for them. So I first picked up this book because I read the author's previous book, She is a Haunting, and that one I was also kind of okay with. I think I rated 3.5 stars. And with both books, our main character is Vietnamese. She deals with a lot of stuff that I think a lot of Vietnamese kids can relate to. And you especially see that when you see the relationship between her and her mother, how her mother wants the best for her but doesn't really know how to communicate that. And in turn, that makes her feel like she isn't heard and isn't understood in things that she's feeling. I thought in the beginning this book setup was really good, the vibes were great, but as the story went along, I felt like it was very steady on the pickup. I didn't really feel like anything truly happened or there weren't major action sequences happening in a way until we reached the last 50 pages. And if the book was paced like the last 50 pages, I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more. But throughout the story, you do discover secrets and you uncover things that weren't formerly known. This did take me a bit to finish. I think I wasn't really connected to any character at all in this story. There was no one who really compelled me to really root for them or to care about them. And I really wish that I liked it because I do love these types of stories. I love that we're getting Vietnamese stories and Vietnamese culture and family life depicted. So I think if you're looking for something a bit more slower pace, but on the creepy, disturbing side, this will be a good book for you. But personally, it wasn't a favorite of mine. Moving on to my second book, which is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. This one I actually read because the movie just came out this year, and I really wanted to read the source material before I moved on to actually seeing the movie. So we follow our main character, Rylan Grace, who is a middle school science teacher, and one day a government official comes to his school, asks him about the research paper that he wrote when he was in university, and she invites him on this project called the Hail Mary Project. And the whole dilemma is that the sun is dying, there is something eating at the sun, and they're trying to put together a team who can go up there, figure out the problem, and solve it. But then things go awry, a lot of developments happen, and he is actually sent on this project himself, and you really get to see his adventures in space, what he discovers, what he runs into. And I think the story depicts a really good story about friendship and perseverance and sacrifices. I did like this a lot. I think that the science is the core of the story. You really can't go without the science, and even if you don't know science, I think that the author really explains enough that you can understand why they're doing this and why this is happening. So it's not like you have to understand science as a whole level and understand like the depth of every equation and every process or anything like that. I do love the humor in this. I think that a lot of people compare it to 2010's Reddit humor, but I thought it was funny. I think that there are comedic elements and funny moments that give you a good laugh, especially our main character Rylan. He is super funny, cracking jokes from time to time, and you really feel that lightheartedness of his personality. And of course, the star of the show is Rocky. We all love Rocky. He is a wonderful character. He himself is very funny. He's just an interesting type of character. And the friendship between him and Rylan, I think that they really learned how to confide and trust in each other, which I really loved reading about. When you're reading the story, the author doesn't really explain a lot and describe things, so you can't really picture how the characters look since it's not super explained, which is fine. I know that the author says he doesn't really imagine things in his head while he writes, so if you're an imaginative person like me, you kind of just have to make up what the characters look like in your head. And because I read this after I found out about the movie, I was just picturing Ryan Gosling in my head while I was reading about Rylan. As you're reading this, you're getting Rylan's current situation where he's in space and he's teaming up with Rocky in order to find a cure for the astrophage that is eating at both of their sons. And then in between certain chapters, you get the flashbacks that he suddenly starts to remember as time goes on about how he got into the situation and what led up to them sending him and everyone else to space. The writing in this is very straightforward. Other than the sciencey parts, I think that this is very easy and quick to read. Not that the science was hard, like I said, but if you're not a sciencey person like me, you just read it just to know like why the problem is being solved this way, and then you just move on. I know there were some people who did not like the ending of this book, but I thought that it was very fitting for it. I personally liked it. I think that maybe I would have preferred it to go the other way, but I think this way is suitable for Rylan's character and what he stands for. All in all, I think that the praise this book gets is very well deserved. It's a great story. You'll really think about a life and the relationships that you create within your own lives. And it really leads you to the question, like, if you were put in that situation, would you have been able to send yourself on this mission knowing that you would never come back? So for all the sci-fi fans, I think that you will enjoy this a lot, and I would recommend this book. And for my third finished book of this year, it is Weaving Shaw by Heba Awasfi. And this one I loved immensely. I loved it so much, I just wanted to keep reading and keep consuming the story. So we follow our main character Lena, whose brother is suffering from an illness that is said to be super fatal, and she arrives on the doorstep of the Saint of Silence, who can grant anyone's wish as long as you share a secret with him. So Lena goes up to the Saint of Silence's doorstep, trades her biggest secret, which is that she is able to see the dead, in order to afford this medicine, and she gets the medicine for her brother. But after finding out her secret, our Saint of Silence, Mr. St. Silas, he tasks her with finding a ghost for him. His connection with this ghost, you learned about that more as you read the story. There is a lot to uncover, a lot of secrets that even the Saint of Silence himself has. And with Lena's investigations looking into all these ghosts, you get deeper and deeper into the world, and eventually you get to Weaving Shaw, which is this house, this manor that holds so many secrets. This book is very lush with its gothic vibes. I loved it so much. I think that upon reading the first chapter, I was so immersed in the story and within the environment. I felt like I was within those streets myself with our main characters. The atmosphere is very dark, and our main character Lena, I actually love her so much. She is so true to what she believes in. She is very sentimental. She holds fast to things that are true in her heart and that she believes in wholeheartedly. And although she's very careful, she can also be very rash when it comes to the people that she cares about and the people that she loves. And with St. Silas, he is a very mysterious character, but as the story goes on, you learn more about him and about his past. He's just very interesting to unravel, and you start to see why he's doing these things, like why he's collecting these confessions from people, and how these ledgers that he's writing the confessions in really play into this other thing that he has to take part in. If you love Yearning, this is the book for you. I thought the Yearning in this was so good. I love a slow burn. I think people would consider this an immense, super slow burn, but for me, this is like perfect pace. I love that I'm finding more stories about characters who yearn, especially our male main characters yearning. I think that that is very important, and I don't read a lot of romance books, so I don't know. Is that like a common thing these days? I think the pacing in this is also very good. I didn't have any problems with it. I found this super easy to read, super easy to stay invested in. And now I'm just waiting for the sequel information because this is supposed to be a trilogy, and this always happens to me where I read a new book that just came out and then I have to wait for the rest of the series. It's just like agonizing at some points. The relationship between Lena and St. Silas develops very slowly, but I love that part of their relationship. I love how they gradually got to know each other and how their feelings for each other started to really transform. And honestly, if I could erase my memory to reread this book, I would do it. I enjoyed it so much and I would totally recommend this. So if you love gothic atmospheres, lush environments, paranormal activities, and yearning from a male main character, also a slow burn, you should check out this book definitely. And now we are on to our fourth book, which is The Burning God by R.F. Kuang. I finally finished the series. This has been something that I've been reading for a couple years. I read The Poppy War and The Dragon Republic back to back, but The Burning God, I did start it after I finished The Dragon Republic, but I took a while to get through it because it just made me so depressed it was going to end, and I was not ready for how it would end. But I can't really talk about the plot of this without spoiling the previous two books. I think that everything that has happened within the past two books really accumulates within this book. You see all the consequences that Rin has to deal with, and this ending, I think that a lot of people were mad at it. I understand why it ended that way, and I'm personally not mad about it. I wish that things could have been different, but I think that this was very fitting, and this was something that had to happen. It was honestly very painful seeing all our characters and how much has changed between them. And as tensions rise and suspicions grow, you really feel heartbroken at how things ended up as they are now. I'm a big fan of R.F. Kuang's books, as you guys know. This one I don't think was the strongest in the series. My favorite personally is The Dragon Republic, but I think this was a good closure to the story, and although it isn't one that people like, I think it's very fitting, and I think that it closes up the story in a way that makes sense. I don't think I've ever felt so much love for Kitai until I really read this book. Like, of course I loved him and I loved his character, but in this book I just loved him even more. And I just keep thinking about our main characters, our trio, how I love them so much. So check out the series, but do look up the content warnings if you're sensitive to some content. There is a lot of dealings with war, obviously, a lot of the consequences, the dealings of war, so definitely be careful with that. There is a lot of history rooted into the story that we can learn about and we can think deeper about. And now on to our fifth book. This is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. This one I actually took the Fable mood quiz in order to pick my next read, and this was what it came up with, and I was like, sure, why not? I've been meaning to check out Susanna Clarke's work. I've heard great things about Piranesi. There is no way that I would dislike it, and I was right. I ended up loving it so much. I think this book is best to go in blind with. If you can avoid looking at the synopsis before you read, I think that that is the preferable way I would go about it. But this book, it's very much you don't know until you know, so you have to be okay with just being told things without making sense of it. There's a bit of mystery in this. You start to question things, and this is told in the journal entries of our main character Piranesi, and at a certain point you do kind of feel like things aren't as straightforward as they seem to be. I thought the language in this was really well done. I loved how the author wrote everything, how they depicted Piranesi and the characters that he comes into contact with. In this ending, I also have heard that it has a lot of mixed reviews. Personally, I think that it fit with the characters. I think that this was the best outcome that could have came from the story, and I stand by the ending. I loved it. I think that it kind of gives most people like what they want out of it. The pacing in this book was really good. I love the build up to the climax of the story. Although people do say it's predictable, I still enjoyed it a lot. I don't think that knowing or having that feeling took away anything from it. And more about the language, I think that Clarke really touches upon the tenderness in which Piranesi thinks about where he lives, and his inner thoughts made me chuckle at times. Again, I stand by the ending. I think every character got what they deserved, and I think this was the best outcome. Now for our second to last book, which is the sixth book that I finished. This is the Decagon House Murders by Yukito Ayatsuji. Yukito Ayatsuji is the creator of Another, which I think many of you guys have seen the anime too. And don't come at me, but I have not seen Another. I have seen Shiki, which his wife wrote, and I love that story a lot. But Decagon House Murders tells a story about 7 friends who are in a mystery club at the university, and they all pack up their things, go on a trip to this island where a murder occurred 6 months prior to the story's events. Little do they know that this trip won't be as smooth as they think it will be, and the mysteries won't be as straightforward or unharmful to them. There are things of their past that they forget about that need to be confronted, and and that is dealt with within the events of the story. I actually read this because on Pagebound they had a Japanese Cherry Blossom Festival achievement, and this was one of the books that I saw on the list, so I knew that I had to finally read this and just finish another book off of my TBR. All these characters go by an alias as you read about them in the story, and they're all based on authors within the literary space. So you got characters named Agatha, Ellery, Van Dyne, and they're referred to this throughout the story. You never learn their real names, which I think adds to the mystery of it. When I read other people's reviews of this, I saw that people were confused about the writing and how straightforward it is, and how we really don't get super in-depth development that we get in Western writing. But I think the point of that is that they want you to solve the mystery alongside the characters, so they'll lay out all the clues, they'll divulge information as you need them. So personally, I did not have a problem with that. I thought that that was great. I was able to come up with my own conjectures about what happened within each situation. Everything that I thought about and was theorizing about was addressed in the story, so I didn't feel like they missed out on anything. And as the murders start happening within this house, you see the characters' reactions, how they suddenly interact with one another, how they start being more cautious of each other and more cautious about the things around them, because these deaths are very mysterious to them. They don't know who's doing this, they don't know why these things are happening to them. And genuinely, until the killer's reveal, I did not know who it was. I did not suspect any of them, to be honest, but that really surprised me. That shocked me. I remember reading this at work. I had to flip my Kobo over, just take a moment to take it all in, because I could not believe that that was what was going on. And the ending to the story, I did see some people say that they weren't super satisfied and they felt like it was kind of a cheap out at the end. And when it comes to the emotions and the motives of the killer, obviously don't agree with anything that happened and what they did, but seeing that this is what drove them to do this, I guess in a context of crime, it does happen quite a bit. There is a part in the ending of the story that just made me immensely sad, so I'm not gonna spoil it obviously, but it's just when you're in the situation and you're with your friends, you're out to have a fun time, but then things start happening and your relationship with your friends changes. Will you really suspect any of your friends being the killer? Will you really believe that your friend could be the one killing all of your other friends? So if you're into mysteries and detective fiction, I would recommend this book. This is the first one I read in this genre, so I'm excited to check out the rest of the series, excited to check out even more Japanese detective fiction. I think that this was such a great treat and I enjoyed it to the point where I looked up every single book within the genre and just added it all to my TBR. So I'm super happy about finally diving into this genre and getting my taste of what's out there. And now we have the last book that I finished. I actually finished it yesterday, and it is Heaven Official's Blessing Volume 1. This one is one that I have had on my shelf for years, I think since 2021. And I finally got into it and read it, and needless to say, I loved it so much. I think the writing is a little clunky, but I think because the characters have already been instilled in my heart and I already love them, I was able to get through it and I was able to really enjoy the buildup of the story. So in this volume, we follow our main character, Xielian. He is an immortal who is ascending for the third time, and in order to pay back all of his debts, he has to go on these missions to solve all of these mysteries and just build up his merits again. Xielian's inner thoughts really made me crack up. Every time he thought of something, I thought it was the funniest thing that anyone has ever said in the history of funny things. Although he is the crown prince of Xianle and he has ascended multiple times, you really see, because he was in the mortal realm for so long, he was used to digging up scraps, sleeping on the floor, sleeping in these dilapidated shacks. It's just really funny how he goes from one thing to another. And throughout his journey, he comes across this young boy named San Lang, and they go on these adventures together. And the bond between them really grows as the story progresses along. And you also get these other young officials who accompany Xielian on his journey, named Nanfeng and Fu Yao. And this book does explain a lot about the world itself, so I get it. It's the first book in the series, so there's a lot of explaining that needs to be done. And in the story, they do translate it in a way where it gives you so much context. There's an appendix, there's a glossary, there's a character list, so you can't be lost. You can just look up anything you don't know. And the adventures really kept me on the edge of my seat. I think every chapter ended in a cliffhanger that made me want to keep reading. I just love the development of all the storylines, all the crimes and mysteries that they come across and they have to solve, how Xielian thinks through these things and how he comes to his conclusions. And for the longest time, I knew that I would love Hua Cheng and and I do love him so much. I think everything he says, it feels like he fell out of a romance visual novel. And as an Otome game player, that is something that I'm very familiar with. So far what we got of him, I really loved his character, and I know that within the further volumes, I will grow to love his character and also his relationship with Xielin. This is the first danmei I've ever read, so I'm happy it's my first one. It is a very popular one, so it felt fitting to have it as the first one. Now I have to continue reading the series and look into more books in the genre. This book also has pictures within it. I think it's classified as a light novel, so that's why. So at certain moments and parts, you get illustrations of what's happening within the story, and I think that that really gives you a good visual of how the characters look and how they are set within the world that you're being described. Maybe this makes me want to get into more light novels so I can have a little bit more pictures and just like see the characters themselves. So Heaven Official's Blessing, finally I have finished the first volume. I'm into it and I am not getting out. I am staying here, I love it here, and I will continue to consume every piece of media that comes out of the series. And that is all for everything I read in the first quarter of this year. If you guys want to see more of my reads, you can follow me on Goodreads, on Pagebound, on Fable. I log all of my reading on 3 of those apps. Let me know what you guys have read this year so far, any standouts that you guys may have come across, anything that you're looking forward to reading, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!